Hello, everybody. My name's Kelley. For those of you who don't know, I am the president of Mobile Insurance. We insure a number of manufactured home retailers and park owners. That's our primary business around the country, primarily in this part of the world. But my presentation today focuses on really business management. I'm going to talk to you through the lens of some humor and some examples of things like Cameron Forbes and stuff of people that have done things that were mistakes, and hopefully we can learn from the mistakes of others. The idea is to do three things: educate you a little bit, entertain you a little bit, and finish a little bit early. The hallmarks of a great presentation, right? So here we go. If I get to a slide and I haven't offended you in the first few slides, just hold on. I'll get to you and your special group soon enough. The first thing I just point out is when you do what I do, you're in insurance and you're in law, and I've got a lot of my fellow lawyers in here, you start to see the world a little differently. So I'm going to show you some slides, and you guys might see something different than me. I'm going to show them to you, and I'll ask you what you see, then you tell me, then I'll tell you what I saw. Now, this is the windy point when Hurricane Sandy hit New York, and then in the middle of the big hurricane, here's this fire that breaks out in this little neighborhood. So what do you guys see here? What are you thinking? Insurance claims. Terrible, awful, what a shame. Not only were hit by a hurricane, they're hit by fire. Well, my immediate thought was, how lucky are they? Almost none of these people bought wind policies. They all had fire policies, and their houses would have been destroyed by wind, but now they're all paid off. So here we are. This is a picture of I took next to a park in East Texas and a little drainage area about behind it. So you're thinking, that's kind of cool. Alligator, fun, exciting. Isn't that neat? Of course, I'm thinking the little kid's going to get back there, and Yanina's going to get sued because it's her mobile home park, and it's going to cost me $1 million. Oh, here we go. Here we go. It's a little bit slow. Okay, now what are you seeing here? A house. It's been blown apart. It's been terrible wind. Of course, what I'm seeing here is there's going to be some Bill Maupin type character that's going to go buy that house and rehab it and sell it, and then I'm going to have a product liability claim in 4 or 5 years. What are you seeing here? Speed, exciting, cool, fun. Who wouldn't want to be in there? Of course, my immediate thought is, how is it going to be insured, and which one of the Roddy kids is going to be driving this thing, Ratty kids is going to be driving this thing, and how bad is it going to be? Sometimes we talk to people about things. So I'm going to give you some pointers through here about things to do and watch out. And sometimes the first question is, why do you insure? And I think this picture shows it up best. Your customers and your tenants and the people that you deal with, that's who they see when they see you. They don't see what you probably see in the mirror, which is a struggling small business person that's just got an investment or a business, we're just trying to make it to the next day. That's what they see. So whenever there's a problem that occurs, no matter how tangential you are to the problem, they're going to think, well, that's Craig Calkins made this house 10 years ago. I know he wasn't in the area, he didn't drive the car, he didn't make the street, but it's got to be his fault. So here's a little notes on things. I won't read all my slides here, but some good things to keep in mind here on who are doing it. Anyway, one of the other things I'll think about too is customer relations are a big deal, and the way you communicate with your clients, clients and tenants that understand you and aren't disgruntled, and at least understand why there's a rule that they're having to follow or the problem they didn't like. If you've got a good communication, the claims really are dramatically less than if they aren't. I mean, I've taken care of some. You hate to point out people, but a lot of you have taken care of Sam Spears for years. It's very, very rare that we have a disgruntled client thing that they haven't already taken care of. So, here's a little slide of sometimes it's good to be nice to people. You never know as time goes on who's going to be out there watching for you in the future. Sometimes if you're taking care of your clients, you're taking care of your suppliers, your servants, at some point in time, maybe the relationship will flip and who's guarding who. It's kind of a fun one there. The other thing I see some people try to get too confusing with messages. If you can't read that, I'm sure someone started out with a different thing. I'm a caution, the sign has sharp edges. Do not touch the edges of the sign. And at the very bottom, it says, also, the bridge is out ahead. So confusing messages with your clients or issues. Here's a guy that's got our prices, our sofa king low. It's a little confusing. Here's the, I don't know if you guys can read that back there. I'll read them. Buy one fish and chips for the price of two and receive a second fish and chips absolutely free. So sometimes these too clever of an ads, and we get people just going a little bit too far with things, and it causes issues in the long run as far as the number of stuff. Funny little signs you see up, beware of the dog, the cat is not trustworthy either. Here's one, free chicken strips, if you can see the chickens on the bottom. About 25% of our lawsuits with our manufactured home retailers have to do with some type of allegation of misrepresentation. The house was going to be, had gold beams in the side, or it was going to be longer, it was going to be prettier, the workmanship was going to be better. And the more clear you are with exactly what they're getting and not trying to overpromise. You need to make a sale, but you overpromise, it gets into issues. A quick tip here, for all of you that are community operators, and this is something I don't see nearly enough, but if you have in your lease, or your part, particularly in the lease that they sign, you need to have an arbitration agreement that covers everything that happens in the park, hopefully including any potential bodily injury claims they might have against you or property damage. And it should exclude anything to do with evictions, et cetera, because that's more time-consuming and expensive in arbitration than is just a little civil JP court. But everything else is typically done much better in an arbitration case. The difference between arbitration and civil court as a main issue is that with arbitration, you're not likely to get the crazy judgment. Plaintiffs' lawyers love going to trial if there's an opportunity for a crazy judgment. He hurt his back, he's going to be fine, forget about, well, no, he's not. It's going to be hurt forever, it's going to be painful, he's probably not going to get married, I know he's been a loser his whole life. Never worked, but he was going to get a job at IBM next week if not for the back. So you kind of get away from that stuff. Harsh messages. Here's a picture from out in West Texas, which sometimes, and I always laugh, sometimes you go into certain stores or establishments, and the first thing you see is no checks, no cash, no credit cards. Be careful with that kind of stuff. It kind of sets a bad start for your clients when they show up here. Here's what you're getting sued for. That's an actual picture of me on some steps in Huntsville, Texas, that someone had set up. If you can't see, that's a swivel chair with rollers going into a house. The number one loss we have on retail locations is slip and falls. The number one reason is improper steps with handrails on it. And you might think, well, okay, they slip and fall, they're just going to fall off and they'll be all right. They'll get up and walk on. That happens. But sometimes you get people that are disabled, and we had one case where we had a woman who slipped and fell off the steps, hit her leg. She was a diabetic. She was overweight, pretty bad bruising. Circulation gets bad. 3 months later, her leg is amputated. And those are huge losses. Yes, Brandon. It was at a dealership. She was going up the steps, dealer-owned home. The steps weren't the code. And if there is a slip and fall, no matter how lazy they are, no matter how clumsy they are, no matter how out of shape they are, no matter how drunk they are, and we have that quite a bit, you will pay the claim. This is a picture of a tree that fell over in Hurricane Rita over some houses. And this is, if you have untrimmed trees, in this particular case, it was a healthy tree, and it wasn't the park owner's fault. But if you have dead trees and you have a dead tree that falls on someone's property or person and injures them or their property, that's a claim that's a fairly typical claim for us. Just a little picture, but Rockmore, we've had people that aren't careful with their mowing in their communities and their properties. We've had them hit sprinkler heads, shoot the sprinkler head across the street, hit a woman in an eye and lose her eye. So these kind of things happen, and they're six-figure losses when they happen if you're fortunate. Utility problems. We don't think about this too often. What could possibly go wrong? We have this electrical current going through our park that's deadly to human touch. We also have this gas. It has no smell, no sound. You can't tell it in. And by the way, if it gets in your house and gets in there, you'll also die immediately. And we forget about those things. Electricity and natural gas are in our lives all the time. We had in Diboll, Texas, some years ago, we had some people, they decided they would heat their house with their oven. Well, ovens kick off a lot of carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide. Everybody woke up the next morning, and there was 4 kids in there, and they all had brain damage. So do we have a problem with our heater? And their heater had been out. It was a huge claim for us. Talked a little bit about slip and falls. This is an actual pair of steps. Taking a picture of one of our former clients. Yeah, that's Todd Lamb's park. That's one of Todd's better steps. Now, this next picture is a little graphic, and this is just wax still, but it's an actual case that happened earlier this year. We had one of our retailers wanted to show a house. The house had just come in. It was a special order house, and they didn't have stairs and steps up on it yet. So we have an enterprising salesman. He decides, well, I'm going to show that house anyway. Randy Kemp's going to be real happy, and he finds out I sold another house for him. And so he gets the people up. By the way, they showed up drinking. Their beer cans were coming out of the pickup. They showed up, and he gets them real temporary steps and puts them up against the house, and they get up in the house. Well, on the way out, after they've looked at the house and they love it, and they really kind of want to buy it, the lady decides, well, it'd be easier for me just to shimmy off the side where the porch is. Well, the porches have all those slats in them. And she's a healthy girl with fairly short legs. And so she's trying to shimmy off there, and she has her fingers stuck in the slats between the wood behind her. She went off. The finger didn't. So that's an example of teaching your salespeople and the people who are walking property. Don't let them jump off stuff. Don't let them walk out that back door where there's no steps on. You got to stay with them. Dogs. There's a little story up there about one. We had one time where we had a park manager that took a dog and corralled the dog. It was a stray dog. The park manager put it in a little temporary shed. A little girl was watching all this happen, and she thought, well, I'd like to go peek at that dog. And so she goes in, and she walks up into the shed. She opens the shed door and sticks her head in. And the next thing anybody knows, they see the little girl being pulled across the lawn by the face. And so here we are, and her face is terribly disfigured. Her mother was beautiful. She was beautiful. And then we're in front of a jury, and the jury is going, well, it's going to affect her personality. Does it affect your personality, ladies, if you're disfigured and you're going through junior high and high school? Does it affect who you're with? Does it affect probably who you're going to marry? Does it affect what you're going to do? We paid, I think, $400,000 on that claim. This is a different one up here. And we were really happy to get out paying that much on that claim. But if you've got a dog issue, in my opinion, you cannot allow any of the aggressive breeds of dogs in your parks, no matter what. Pit bulls, German shepherds, Rottweilers, Akitas, wolf hybrids, chows. If they're in your property and they bite someone, it's almost a strict liability situation where you have no defense. We had a lady earlier this year that was almost killed, a bull mastiff, which had been formally evicted from the park. They'd hidden the dog in the house, hadn't let it out. Neighbor comes over, gets the lady by the neck, and if you saw the pictures, I was going to bring that picture, but they're too graphic. It looked like she would have been dead. Her neck was almost gone. Service animals. Has anybody run into service animals issues in their communities? If someone says, I have a service animal, this is my pet pit bull, it's a service animal, it watches my seizures, it's a good companion animal, I've got a note that says it is, can you kick it out? Yeah, Brandon's right, you can't. If they say, and we've got some very specific rules, and there's an article on our website specifically on that issue. If you run across it, you can't. Now, if the animal proves to be aggressive, and you've seen it try to attack someone, you can. And there's a little bit of documentation you can require, but for the most part, if they say it's a service animal, or some of them are obvious for people that really need them, others aren't. Others are just a guy that's a bird dog, got a big bird dog he just wants to keep in the house. The EEOC, who knows what that is? Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. I bring that up because they're more active than they've ever been. And there's new funding for them from the federal government. They're concerned that there's going to be some unfair small business people taking advantage of people, and they're doing more audits than they ever have. And if they show up at your place and they're very nice and neat, be careful. They say that they're neutral. They're really not. They're looking for violations. The more violations they find, the more cases they're involved in, the more cases they have, the more job justification they have. When they do, ask them for specific responses. They'll ask you, and they'll say, I'll get back with you with all of your responses, and get them back to them in writing after you've had a chance to get some counsel to help you with them. But be careful with that right now. That's, there's significant new funding with the federal government that's causing these issues. Swimming pools, ponds, all these things in your communities, I think those are things you know are issues, but just to be aware of, they happen. And when you have a drowning in your property, whether it's a pond or a river or park, it can be pretty catastrophic on your losses. And that's just a funny picture of in one of the retirement communities where we had someone park their car in the wrong spot. But it's not unusual to have a seven-figure claim on a drowning. Smoke detectors. That's just that looks like a Texas trailer house smoke detector. You can see the Jiffy Pop popcorn. Very good. Thank you. But if you do have rental houses, the new rule is you have to have working smoke detectors, and you have to have them in the sleeping areas. And if you don't, and there's any fire issue there, that will be the reason why they pointed it out. It won't be because they were drunk or they were high on crack cocaine, laid on the floor, and it was all their and they were burning their pipe, and that caused a problem. It will be because there was not a smoke detector. That's why they were killed. If we have one thing I really like on our website, it's a smoke detector way of off. It's called a battery check-in. And so let's say Marcia checks them into a rental house, and she says, oh, by the way, right now the smoke detector is working, and it's up to you to make sure the batteries are kept up on that. Because Marcia knows from experience that once she moves them in there, what are they going to do with those batteries? They're going to take them out and put them in their toy or their gadget or whatever. And then when there's a fire, they're going to get blamed for it. So have them sign off on that when they go in. It's a great way to do it. Negligent security. There was a recent case in Houston. This is just a funny picture to go with it. Grandma knows best. Lets you and I chat about Jesus while we wait for the police to arrive. That's what that says. But the topic here is when you have a security issue in your park, particularly a sexual assault in your community, you have to give notice to everybody. Recently, there was one in Houston where there was a sexual assault in the apartment complex. It wasn't given notice to everybody. A month later, a lady's raped in the apartment complex. She sues the managers of the apartment complex for not giving her notice, or otherwise she would have been more diligent. Her judgment was only $20 million. I got a little deal about that. Says utility issues. We have people getting trapped in. Yes, Yanina. The question of Yanina is, when do we need to report things to the police? Oh, to the community. When do you need to put them on a log? Oh, when do you need to warn your residents? I think whenever you have a situation that could be a menace to anybody else. And a sexual assault would be a great one. If you have a wife and a husband duking it out, they typically beat each other up, which that's great. But if they start hurting other people, that's when it causes the problem. But anything that could affect others, that's when you want to give notice, particularly the sexual assaults. That's the one that our juries are showing zero tolerance for. I hope that answers your question. There's not a great answer. Auto accidents. I could talk about auto claims for a long time. When you're out on the road, particularly those of you driving the big trucks and the transporters, the old rule in our office, when someone says, whose fault was the accident when a toter is involved, the answer is the toter. No matter what they were doing. If they were just walking out of church and just getting in the toter and in their lane, if there's a problem, it's going to be the toter. Now, how many manufactured homes that are 16 feet wide stay within their lane lines on the trip to their location? Zero. And we've had it. We've had situations where we're going down a two-lane highway, it's busy, there's 185 cars come by, and they all get by just fine. and then there's the one guy in the Yugo that's not paying attention. And he catches the edge of the deal, and you'll have at least one witness that say we're across the line. And even if everybody else got by, what's going to happen? You're going to pay the claim. It's going to be big. Pests, fire ants can be an issue if they're overwhelming in your community. You just need to take issues with them. You get little kids that can wander into them. If you have a particularly drastic problem, it's a problem. Texting while driving. I was recently riding around with a friend of mine who's the CEO of a publicly traded company. His wife was in the back seat. He's driving, his phone rings, and he hands her the phone. I was thinking, well, why didn't he just pick it up? We're on an open highway. And he told me the rule with his corporation was if you answer a cell phone while you're driving, it's immediate termination. If you text while driving, it's immediate termination. And if you saw the judgments against drivers that are texting and driving and involved in an accident, that would be your corporate policy too. And I would say it should be as of today if it is not already. None. Anybody that drives for you, no talking on the cell phone while they're driving, unless it's hands-free, certainly no texting. If they find out about it, that's immediate termination. Yes? Probably not, but it should limit the number of opportunities they have to do it. But yeah, you're probably going to get sued and lose anyway. There's one in Corpus Christi recently, a Coca-Cola driver, and she admitted talking on the cell phone. I thought it was a claim that would have been $400,000 of damages. It was several million. Juries just don't care. In your communities, if you have these little areas where it's hard to see around the corner, and people drive out on a bicycle or a car and get hit, those are things to watch out for. You need to set up things to watch for them. Employment problems. When people get fired for whatever reason, they claim it's for the wrong reason. In Texas, the rule is you can fire anybody for any reason except for what? Race? Religion? Yeah, gender? Age? National origin, sexual orientation sometimes. So there's just a few things you can't fire people for, but that's the reason they will say you fired him. It wasn't because Todd showed up, he was drunk and high, and he beat up 6 people. It's because he's Catholic. I mean, they'll come up, that's the reason. So you have to watch your files when you're dealing with people and managing people on it. And here's an example of it. Just the caption reads, "It's not unfair dismissal, John. We know it's you." And he's dressed up as a woman. Here. Golf carts. Do any of you use golf carts on your premises, properties? We had a golf cart death on a dealership in Louisiana last year. Guy's going a little too fast. They turn a little corner. The guy rolls out of the cart. Medical complications later, he's dead. So you have to train your employees. If they're ferrying people around on the property, then you just have to watch that. Speed up here. Fires. The number one cause of $1 million plus losses in mobile home parks is fires in park-owned homes. If you guys can see here, I don't know if you can see this outline, fires in mobile homes happen quickly. That's the outline of the cat that was standing against the wall when the fire broke out. That's how fast they happen. I know if your house, if Randy Kemp's 5,000 square foot mansion catches fire on the east wing, he's probably got time to get out and get some stuff. If you're in an 800 square foot manufactured home, they can heat up in a hurry and it's too late. I think Sean Fuller sent me that picture. Just a nail sticking straight up. The first thing here I see on this is the swimming pool fence. If your swimming pool fence can't pass the wandering 5-year-old test, it's a bad fence. And that one can't. They crawl right under that. Discrimination claims, people are getting sued for all kinds of things these days. One thing we don't think of, and this is really a new phenomenon, is how many of you have in your data systems any personal information, social security numbers, names, addresses of any clients, tenants, whatever. Most of us do these days. And not only can people hack into your system, but they can steal your computer. And if they do that, there's about 10 or 12 federal notices that you have to give to people in order to get back to square one. Sony, when it happened to Sony recently, they paid over $2 billion in costs associated with correcting their loss. Here's a We talked about pets. Here's a snake on a leash. I found that picture in a mobile home park. I think that's Jay Burkhalter's snake. Product liability, when your homes are being set up, transported, got 15 to, how many tons is a home going down the road, Randy? 10 to 30? Yeah. What could possibly go wrong, huh? Worker injuries, here's a guy getting ready to drop the hammer down. Worker injuries, and a lot of people in Texas don't carry workers' compensation insurance. It's not that expensive. And what workers' comp, when you have an employee injured on the job, you're responsible for their medical benefits and their medical expenses for how long? And their wages. For life. So people ask me if they should get workers' comp, and I said, no, you don't need it if you can afford to take care of them for the rest of their life. If you can't, you should get it. So what could possibly go wrong? Here's some actual pictures of storms and losses. And when you see these, I'm going to go through them pretty quickly, but it's just a good example of what can happen in your property. And you need to make sure that you've got a plan for contacting people, plan for going forward, that you're properly insured. I know in this particular case, we insured this property, and he said after the storm and after the insurance proceeds, he actually had a better equity investment. But you can see these storms just do awful things. This was a F3 storm that hit a direct hit on a mobile home park in Oklahoma, Lone Grove, Oklahoma. You wonder if the guy was reading the newspaper when that storm hit. I kind of like this picture here. Now you guys may recognize that this was 2005 Hurricane Rita. But people tease us about our homes not being strong and flimsy. This is an unsecured manufactured home sitting on the lot right next to this concrete block structure. The home was fine. The concrete structure blew apart. And you see with wind damage and some of the stuff that Martin talked about yesterday, it looks for weak link. Here they found these metal doors, and they blew in air, and then it made them explode. This is the, and if you have certain windstorms, there's nothing you can do. Here's a town that was wiped out by, I don't remember if Greensburg was an F4 or F5, but that town was basically gone. Fires, alcohol-related issues. It's a good thing to talk to employees about. Other issues, here's just an example. Here's a guy with a trash can lid on his head, sitting in the swimming pool, drinking his drink. I know we've never seen this here at the association, but people do things a little bit differently when they're drinking in the evenings or afternoons or whenever, so that's just something to watch out for. Vandalism is something we see pretty regularly. Sewage issues, especially for our community owners, if you have a sewage backup, and we've seen it back up into every home in the park. If you have 140 tenant-owned homes and you get sewage water into all of them, it's because you had a blockage in the front of your park. Think you got a problem? So you have to make sure your lines are as clean as possible. Tornadoes. This was from Kelley, Oklahoma, taken last year. Just picked up that home and did exactly what Martin said it would do. It flipped over, and then the weight of the axles and the frame collapsed the house. That's my car after Donna and I got back from Tulsa a few years ago in the Tulsa airport. I got back to my car, and someone had borrowed my wheels. Autos, and this is just a funny deal for, remember who's driving for you. If you've got people out driving, that's a big deal. If they're a commercial driver, all of our evidence shows that anybody that's a commercial driver, they'll pay 2 to 3 times the amount of a claim that someone that was just driving their own vehicle. So if someone's a questionable driver, don't let them drive for you. They do no driving for you. Have designated drivers. And we have on our website kind of agreements like a teenager operating agreement that we recommend you have everybody sign. Where am I on my time? Okay, there we go. All right, I'm going to speed up. Sexual assaults, issues to watch out for, plan for disasters. Again, some more pictures of some pretty devastating stuff. This is the pictures here from this area a few years ago, 2011, from downtown Austin toward Bastrop. Bastrop, I heard it was Bastrop. That's Possum Kingdom area. I mean, it burned everything. Here's Texas Tech Field after a flood some years ago. The stadium flooded. That's a picture I took in Montgomery County, Texas. Jerry Haley's had some property in there. Is Jerry in here? Yeah, that was taken right there by your subdivision. That's the apartment complex before the Joplin's tornado. That's it afterward. Managing your business partners. I always talk to people about, make sure we all deal with, we deal with suppliers, we deal with contractors, we deal with whoever. Pay attention to them and make sure you're picking them well. With our manufactured home retailers, about a third of the losses are caused by people that are contractors causing problems. You know, check your partners out good before you do business with them. Make sure they're insured, they're bonded, they're licensed, and ask around. You can avoid some embarrassing situations and problems sometimes if you watch that a little bit. One thing we recommend, and it's just becoming a regular thing in our industry, if you're not using performance agreements whenever you hire anybody to do any significant work for you, transporters, installers, people clearing lands, digging ditches, we have some great ones on our website, and they're made specifically for what we do and our people, and make sure they're properly insured. So I'd recommend, if you're not using them, to use them. Make sure they're insured. When someone asks for a certificate of liability insurance, this is what they're talking about right here. Certificate of liability insurance. It just says, I'm insured. Got a lot of this stuff on our website too. So anyway, a few other problems I'll go through pretty quickly. You know, consumer lawsuits and product liability. You know, that's about a third of our lawsuits for our manufactured home retailers. They don't like the house. And what starts as a minor issue becomes a major one. If you get sued for this, you know, and you did everything right, our records typically say you'll pay $20,000 in legal fees and $10,000 to $15,000 to settle the claim, if you did everything right. And that's probably with Randy or Howard or whatever manufacturer you've got kicking in something too. It's a mess. And that's also you for purely cosmetic issues too. You know, avoid obviously troubling prospective clients. If you can't read that, that says a pony, next time you'll buy me one. But sometimes you can tell a client is just bad when you do it. And when you do it, give them the phone number of your competitor and recommend they go shop with them. Because if you can avoid that tenant, it's a big deal. Bank deposits. This is becoming more and more of an issue these days. Here you got these ducks have set this girl up, stealing her money. But if you haven't had a discussion with your bank about how your deposits are protected and what you need to be doing, you should. We had one of our retailers earlier this year, a Russian group, hacked his computer, was able to send an email from his computer to his bank to do an electronic transfer of $30,000 to their account. And it happened. And the $30,000 was gone. Now, in that particular case, the bank ended up eating it, but that's a big issue. And so in some cases, it's your fault. They could have said, well, your security on your computer wasn't good enough either. That came from us. What were we supposed to do? Avoiding claims, you know, clear and thorough home closings handled by someone other than the involved salesperson is a good idea. We talked about experienced insured subcontractors. If you're not doing home warranties, they're a good idea. You get people calling the warranty company, not you, and expecting you to take care of it. It's not a bad thing. They don't get upset with you. Hire an experienced insurance agent. That's probably the big one there. Learning from the mistakes of others again. Here's a guy that went hunting. Things didn't turn out like he wanted to, but here's another guy that apparently did something he wasn't supposed to do. Hope she was worth it. And if you do all these things, life is good and you can rest well. Hope you enjoyed the few laughs and a few lessons in there, but that's it. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to take them. If not, there's arbitration agreements on our website, and you can take them and you can paste them and put them within another agreement, or you can just use the arbitration agreement itself. There's a Texas-specific one on there. And on our website, which is mobileagency.com, you can look on the forms section, and that's where they are. There's a bunch of good stuff on there. Jerry. Arbitration versus mediation. As a general rule, we recommend arbitration because mediation is not, no one's bound by it. Mediation is we're going to go try to work it out, and me and Steve have a disagreement about his cattle running on my property, and we'll try to work it out, and we probably can. But if we don't, we just all leave and we go back to suing each other. With arbitration, if you go and we go in, they're going to make a ruling, and we'll be bound by it at least till someone appeals it. So I kind of like it better. I like the finality of it. The other thing we like about, with especially the consumer lawsuits in Texas, is if you've got a problem and you've got a client that just can't be satisfied reasonably, call in Joe Garcia. File a complaint with the Texas Department on your, or file a request for an inspection. And what they'll do is they'll come out and they'll look at your house and they'll tell you, okay, here's these 3 things you've got to fix. And once you fix those, and then he sues you, you got a third party that said you've done everything right. You look a lot better in front of the jury. So that's not a bad technique. When should you be an additional named insured on a policy? That typically when you hire someone, when you subcontract out work, that's significant. So let's say in your case you did someone that was going to do some land development, dig ditches, pave a road, put in utility systems. That's a great idea. Have them name you as an additional insured on their policy. And the very least, you want to make anybody that's working for you, and someone that's transporting a home for you. That's a great idea. And at the very least, someone's doing lighter work, you just have them proof of insurance. Give me a certificate of insurance. So Kristen hires someone that's going to do some, maintenance on our building or something. Just show me you're insured. Send me a certificate of liability insurance. Put my name on there if you're going to be doing regular work. Because once you're on a certificate of insurance, if they cancel it the next day, you get notice that they canceled it. Marcia's saying sometimes they won't put you on it as additional insured. It's too expensive. Sometimes it's nothing, sometimes it's $100 for them to do it. They'll say, well, I'll just put you on as a certificate holder. I think that's fine if it's a de minimis job, a small job. If it's transporting a home, installing a home, doing major work, clearing land, have them name you as additional insured. If they don't want to do it, that's fine. And find somebody that will. People want to work today. Yes, Charlie. Technically, you need 4. You need one in every living. You need one in the front room, and you need one in every bedroom. There are people that would argue, I don't know if someone has a better answer than this, that if all 3 bedrooms are right by each other in the back part of the house, if you put one in the hall, that works. You could say that's the living area. It's arguable. Does anybody have a better answer than that? Yes, Sydney. Are battery-operated smoke detectors still legal? The answer is yes, they're still compliant in most. Now, there might be some localities that don't allow them, Sid, but my understanding is yes, they are. And one of the reasons they like them is when power gets disrupted, they still work. So a lot of people argue they're better. Yeah, before they take the batteries out. They're not quite so good then. Well, great. Thanks.